whole point of using a miniature is to photograph something that for some reason you couldn't photograph in the real world, whether it's because it doesn't exist in the real world, or because it's too big to shoot, or because you simply can't do the camera move that's required. By getting the miniature inside, it means we have complete control over the lighting, complete control over the way the cameras move, because we're shooting it with motion control equipment, so we can do very complex moves. You always want to shoot as big a miniature as possible, because that way you can get maximum detail and keep everything sharp. But sometimes we're shooting miniatures that are miniature images of something that are so large in the real world, we have to go to a very small scale, which means it's very hard to keep it in focus. It means you have to shoot it almost constantly really close, because we're almost always using wide lenses, because that's what gives you the realistic perspective. You're always trying to pick the scale that will work best, both photographically and also just in the sense that you're able to build it. A lot of the miniatures are built at odd scales. It would be 72nd or 35th or something, because that's as big as we could build them and still get them through the door. Once we've blocked a shot and Peter's approved what the camera move is going to be, the art department goes in and looks very carefully at exactly what the camera is going to see, and we do what we call hyper-detailing, which means that just the part that is going to be in frame is very, very accurately detailed. This means using different grades of dust and different sizes of weeds and stuff, because we know that there's a certain level that the camera will resolve, and that's what really makes you believe that it's a real shot. Getting the weeds the right size, or getting the trample marks where the troops have marched through and the ground has been pounded down. Because, in effect, we're trying to simulate a live-action shot at a small scale. We have to be able to make camera moves that look like live-action moves, which means we have to move the camera very, very close to the set, because, of course, the camera is a lot bigger, relatively speaking, than a live-action camera would be. So we have to come in and get really close, and to do that, we're using motion control, which is just a way of moving the camera repeatably, so you can do the same camera move 100 times, and it'll be exactly the same every time. In order to give the digital guys the most options, we break out all the different lighting elements. We break out the key light and the fill light and the light from the sky and the fire lights. We break these out on separate pieces of film. Then they, of course, just transfer all those to the digital world and stack them up to produce the final effect.
Miniature passes, we receive generally between 10 to 30 different passes, depending on the shot. Matte passes, different smoke passes, fill passes, key light passes, all these different names they have. Like, they could do a clean pass like this, and then they could also do one with smoke, and then I could use a matte to say, I want it clean up front and smoky in back. Or they could put, or just lights, they can do a motion control pass of just lights, and then I could do different things with all these different passes and layer them separately.
Here, for example, is one of the reference ladders that we used. We actually had one that was up against the wall and one that was crashed down on the deck, and then we had a series of wires in between that represented the path of the top of the ladder as it would fall. Peter is completely dedicated to making films that are convincing, that don't kick the audience out of the story because of the way the film is made. He wants to make a film that looks like you went out and shot the real world. And he is absolutely convinced, and I completely agree with him, that the more real photography you have in a scene, the more believable the scene is. It should look like you went out and fought to get them. It should look like you went out and battled with the elements, and you had a hard time getting the tripod level, and you really just had to fight to get the shot. From the very beginning, this was a specific approach to use as many miniatures as possible, use as much real photography as you could. In many cases, in other films, let's say a matte painting would have been used, but Peter says, nope, let's get real light on that. Let's get a real camera with real lenses. I think that's part of the reason the film is as convincing as it is that you've got real photography involved.